You can tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. This is me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything. This is the podcast where comedians confess something they want to get off their chest. And we've been doing it over Zoom. I honestly don't think I'll ever go back. This is way better, easier, don't have to drive, you know. But very excited to have on the podcast today, very, very funny comedian and lawyer and political tweeter and recent podcast co-host of the Canceled podcast with Caleb Sinan. Please welcome to the podcast, Troy Walker. What's up?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What's your what's Canceled about? Give us a quick little logline.
So Canceled for me and Caleb, it basically is just it's not really about anything.
Uh-huh.
It's really more just some of it will be political and pop culture. It's basically just us sort of talking about what's going on in the world at the time, and in the way that we do it, just hanging out, joking around, shooting the shit. And so we titled it that because doing that, undoubtedly we're going to say something. So we just think it's funny, like the idea of like
Canceled is canceled.
Just which one of us is going to be the one that's going to say a thing.
That's funny. I do really love podcasts like that, where it's just because that's how a lot of the early ones I listened to, where it's just like friends having fun and being funny, and you're just like hanging out. Yeah.
So that's what we think, and we just kind of, I guess in a way, the whole cancel thing is sort of like an ironic joke for us, because neither one of us is like a horrible person. So I don't, at least I hope. And so it's sort of more of a thing of like, that we're kind of like sending it up a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
So, and that's such a zeitgeist sort of thing right now.
I always hate saying I'm selling merch because I'm not actually, I don't feel like I'm at the level to sell merch, but I'm making hats that say "Cancel Me, Daddy," and they're like dad hats, baseball hats.
That's great.
But I'm with you on that. It is fun to poke fun at. Because I think, there's definitely like an element of gravitas to like the original idea of like call out culture and cancel culture, but we've kind of moved to this point of like insanity, and it must be said.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, that's like the thing that kind of makes comedy really fun to me, is hanging out with your friends and saying outrageous shit.
Pushing buttons, and making them spit, like do spit takes almost. Like sometimes I'll say things I don't believe. Because you know in the room someone will laugh. But now it's like if there's a microphone on. Well, I mean, it's still like hopefully not that bad, but you know.
Oh, no. No, because there's no intent to say anything wild at all anyway.
It's just to poke fun and have fun,
It's literally just us being like, oh, did you see this shit? Oh, what did you think of the convention? Like just talking. But it sort of is just the idea being that the two of us together goofing around are undoubtedly gonna fuck up.
That's funny.
We won't say anything horrible that will actually get us canceled.
Well, I hope Canceled doesn't get canceled. But before we get too far, I like to start by asking my guests for a good confession, just to start on a positive note. Is there something good you want to confess?
I kind of enjoy quarantine.
Okay. A little sheepish in the execution there, but so I'm sensing that you feel, are you ashamed of liking it? I mean, I think this is totally a fine opinion to have.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't want it to sound insensitive, because so many people are having a really tough time.
Do you enjoy the part where people are sick? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that part for sure.
You enjoy being alone and having time for yourself?
I like that, and I kind of like there's like a little less pressure on stuff, and it's kind of stay in your house and watch TV, don't threaten me with a good time, you know what I mean?
Have you seen Palm Springs? I mean, this is not a movie podcast, but I guess anyone listening, but you especially, I think would like it. I just watched it, I love it, and it reminded me of the good parts of quarantine, but also the anxieties it creates but
No, I haven't watched it at all.
have you heard of it, or do you know what it's?
I've heard like people being like, "Oh, Palm Springs is great," or but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Well, now you got all this time.
I do have, there's time, and like, I don't know, I'm starting to be like, I need to get like creative. I need to start like making shit again, because I've been just sitting in here getting fat and like ordering shit.
I feel like that's part of the point of like, I mean, I'm with you in that horrible conditions to be in, but the positives of quarantine, there are a lot of positives. Just like when we were not in quarantine, there are a lot of negatives and positives. And I think one of the positives I found is just learning like how to just understand myself more. And I think statements like, because I also say that this is not a criticism, it's more like I'm hearing myself in it. When you said I need to be more creative, I literally think that all the time. I need to start doing this, I need to start doing this. But I feel like the one plus side of quarantine is realizing like, no, I don't need to do anything. I could if I wanted to, but I am like, there's no teacher or like principal who's like, you gotta do, like, you are that to yourself. So you could say like, I want to do this, but I feel like it's still you wanting to. So I don't know if that helps frame it a little. Like, you have no pressure, because if you do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. And that's kind of it.
Well, yeah, but I think like one of the things about, especially being in LA, as you well know, is, in the before times, like there would be stuff I would want to do. Like maybe I would get home from work and I would want to just hang out, or I'd want to just, play video games or watch a movie or whatever. And there would be this like pressure of like, you can't do that. You need to go to something. You need to get out. You need to go to something. You need to like work on that thing. You need to do, you know what I mean? You need to be writing like something, because it just always feels like you're on the wheel.
Yeah.
And quarantine like ended all of that. Because it's like, because there's such a thing here of like, everybody else is hustling, I need to be hustling.
Yes.
And then quarantine was like, everybody's sitting the fuck down. So I get to kind of, and I think what I've been trying to think of is like, because I'll have like friends who are like freaked out, especially like friends who, those people who are like really unhappy if they're not busy.
You're talking to one of those people.
Huh?
You're talking to one of those people.
Oh yeah, where they're like, but like the way I think of it is like, when this is all over, and it will be at some point, there will probably never again in our lives be a time where we're forced to just stay still. Like for the rest of your life, for all of the rest of your life, all of your days, as soon as it's over, there will always be movie theaters to go to, restaurants to go to, parties to go to, shows to do, things to hang out with people, blah, 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 blah. There'll be all this other stuff to do, and you will have to force yourself to make time to take a break. This is probably the only time in your life where you have to sit down and chill.
That's interesting.
You don't really have another option. And instead of being frustrated by it, like embracing how actually kind of great that is, because it'll never happen again.
So I'm already like hearing things that I love, and I'm learning a lot. But I don't know if you're meaning to what's the word? Expose that much, but I am learning a lot about you from that, because I feel similarly. I'm one of those people who very much is unhappy if I'm not busy. Often you could say it's coping. And I probably am unhappy when I'm busy too, to be honest. But I remember the feeling you're talking about now. I actually distinctly remember in college having a moment like that and being like relieved. And it was when I was studying abroad, because it was like sophomore year, summer or spring, and my fall of sophomore year I had like one of the busiest. I just took on way too much. I came from like overachieving high school, and I was like, I took night classes at FIT. I was on 3 dance teams. I signed up for 2 classes for no credit because I wanted to. Like, one was choir, like just dumb shit that I did not need to do. And I was like, I need to work out. I need to learn to cook. I need to get a boyfriend. I need, like, insane. And I had full classes 8 a.m. But when I was so stressed and I didn't like check in with myself, and then I went abroad, and to France. And the minute I got to France, I was like, oh my God, I literally am in a new country. None of my commitments exist. Like they do and they don't. Like I can go back to the teams when I go back, but I'm in France. I don't have to talk to anybody. I literally have a clear schedule. And I felt like it was amazing feeling, and it kind of reminded me of what you're talking about. But what I learned from that was kind of like, oh shit, I think I was doing more than I needed to. And there is this like pressure from outside and inside. But the reality is like, if you're feeling that much, like it's probably not as productive as you think either. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. But I also feel like in this town and with what we're all trying to do, especially, there is kind of a thing of like, you know, potluck is every Monday.
Yeah. They're very much like, every year I'm like, I'm going to start hanging out at the store more. I'm going to go to improv more. And then like after like a 3-hour mic, I'm like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, it's you get exhausted to do the thing you love. Because I love comedy, but you're tired thinking about it.
You get, and you know, when you move here, like back home, like back in Denver, you know, big fish, small pond, like doing as many shows as I wanted to or not do or didn't at the Comedy Works is like the best club there is. And you just didn't have that. If I didn't want to do a night or something, it was like fun. But like you didn't feel like you didn't have constantly have that like got to stay on the wheel kind of thing. And I feel like here, because of that, there would be like lots of days where I would get home and be like, now I got to drive to West Hollywood and like stand in line on that patio. Like I'm so tired. But you got to just make yourself do it. And it's not that I'm saying that it's good that it's gone or anything, because I don't think that. And I obviously, again, like recognize how much people are hurting and are struggling with it in a lot of ways. But I just feel like in some ways it's what can make it unpleasant is the like urge to fight against sitting still.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where it's like one of my friends I was talking to back home, she was like so miserable. She was like, oh, I'm just in my house and like my friends don't want to hang out and like I can't do that. And I was just like, well, just fucking chill. Like, because I was like, you know, you're 32 or whatever, and probably by sometime next year, this is all done, and it'll go back to everyone being, you know, the world will go back to its thing, and there will always be stuff to do, demands and everything else, and for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you're gonna miss like, having a forced boredom. It's
like one of those things where I guess it's sort of a change your mindset thing. And obviously, you know, if you're, that's why I guess why I was like hesitant to say it.
Right, because some people are, I see what you mean. Some people are working harder, but I don't think, I mean, this is the reality is like when, like you are an empathetic person and that's why you're checking yourself, but because you're empathetic, nobody's going to read this as insensitive. But I understand what your hesitation is, because it's truly how you feel, and you're not saying it's good and you want other people to suffer. But I think other people who don't think that would come off insensitive. But I can tell that you're like coming from this is how you feel and not because like you're taking the best of the truth of the situation, which I think is
it's sort of like in everything there's kind of sort of advantages in a way. Like even like Zoom shows, like a lot of people aren't really liking the Zoom shows, but there are some sort of uniquely cool things you can do with them.
Sure,
that I've noticed where you can use the camera to make act outs more visceral.
You can actually be in the moment is the thing. Like it sounds like you're good at being present. I don't know if that, I mean, I do sort of know because we've talked outside of this that you go to therapy, and I'm curious, like, how much of that is how you are as a person and how much of this is like stuff you're working on and active. Because it shows for sure that you're like very positive about, like, you're not saying I'm ignoring bad things, but you're acknowledging the situation and then being present and making the most of it after acknowledging the reality.
Well, I think it's like, it's one of those things where obviously it's terrible if people are struggling with how to pay for rent and food, and that's why we need the expanded money and things from the government. They need to just get that done. But I guess what I'm saying is that because this is a once in a lifetime thing, it's not. Like, to me, I think of it like, if you sort of embrace the sit down, it might be kind of like.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I hear
there's
that.
never going to be another time.
I can relate to that as well, because I am one of those people who needs to be busy, and I think a little bit of it is internal pressure, but it's like you said, this industry makes you feel like I just need to check things off the list. I need to be out every night. Meanwhile, now that I'm literally not allowed to, I have actually gotten way more done than I ever have, like, which is sad. Like, I'm not actually doing better, to be fair, like financially or career-wise, but I finally, like, I've actually been finishing like features and shorts and like, actually making the stupid merch, which is all stuff in the past I was like, maybe I'll do it. But now that I'm like, I probably need money, I am. But I really do miss stand-up. I'm not saying I would choose this over that, but in the same way.
No.
Yeah, but I relate to what you're saying, like taking the situation and instead of going, I'm waiting, because there's this feeling that we're waiting for it to end, you just go, no, I'm alive and I'm here. So I'm glad when it ends, but instead of acting like I'm waiting in line, I'm going to be here. Like, wherever I am now is the front of the line of the thing I'm at, instead of being like, I'm in a line for the next thing. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. And also, I'm not even just referring to just stand up, because like my friend back home does like marketing, but she was just going insane in her townhouse because she lives alone, and nobody, like, her friends didn't want to meet up or whatever because it was lockdown, and she just is not used to having to sit still in her house. And it was like, she was just like, this is the worst thing. And I was just like, think about it, like, you're like, literally all you have to do, and she's in a different position, she's got money or whatever, but like, it's like a thing where if or like my mom is in her 70s, so she can't, she has to be at home. And at first she was like really bothered, because my mom likes to TJ Maxx and the Home Depot, and then like when I go home and visit, the house is completely different. I'm like, what was this, like, all the time? And so she's a very active person who likes to be out in the street all day every day. Yeah. And all of a sudden now she has to, like, she's been stuck in her house, it's just her and that dog, and it's since March. So, but it was kind of a thing of like, yeah, that's awful, and I miss her, and I hate that she's, trapped in this house. But at the same time, it's not it can be kind of maybe good to sit still for a little bit, and that's I guess I just mean,
don't worry, I'm not going to cancel you, Troy. I am agreeing with you. Well, it's interesting. Okay, I want to add one thing that has been, and then we can move on, but I think that what you said about being stuck in the house is interesting, because we kind of created these like, back in the day, literally, like, houses didn't exist, right? Or they were really flimsy. And we've created this, like, elaborate setup of needs that we need to live, like, down to internet and house and decorations. Like, if you don't have a cool mattress, if you don't have more than 2 sets of sheets, like, it's not very good standards. And these are all kind of things we've slowly over time created. It's not like one person overnight was like, haha. But now that we're stuck with all these things, and if you are in a comfortable enough place to kind of get by for a few months, and it feels like you're suffocating. That's a very interesting like cognitive dissonance, I think. Like there's this perspective it puts, because I also feel I'm alone, and I'm not good alone, and I've had a lot of panic attacks, but as I have them, I'm also very aware that I have all these things that would be much worse if I didn't have them. Like if I didn't have, you know, internet and power and my dog, and like I'm very comfortable. I don't mean to complain, but I think it's important to acknowledge, like, the point isn't to ignore your needs, it's to acknowledge it all, the good and the bad, acknowledge the privilege, and go, I also feel bad, and that's okay. Like I think it's okay to have both.
Oh no, 100% is okay. I guess I was saying that, like, as far as her, I was just being like, and just in a general sense of like, this will never happen again.
Yeah,
for the rest of your life, there will be demands upon you. And so, you know, it might be a thing where in 2 years, like, fuck, man, remember quarantine? Shit.
Yeah, what did you do? And there's going to be lists that are like, you were this type of person now if you were this during quarantine. Or answer these questions, we'll tell you what you did during quarantine.
And I just kind of think there's, in a way of thinking of it that's sort of in a grand scheme sense. That it can be maybe not the worst thing for us to have to sort of slow down a little bit, just individually.
Well, speaking of things that you think, Troy, is there anything you want to tell me?
My confession is that I like the Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat. I like them. And I'm just not as...
You like the Democratic Party as... Okay, yes. I like this because we'll definitely get into this, because I'm also a registered Democrat, but I know you're kind of hinting at this. There's a lot of critiques right now, especially in 2020, about the Democratic Party as a political body. When you say you're a Democrat, take me through a little bit, like, what you mean by that. Are you like, you're like actively, like, are you kind of active, like you're informed and involved and like the candidates, or you're like, I support the left because they're the left, or like, where do you fall on this spectrum?
I mean, I don't just see, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with the two-party system, number one. And I like institutions, generally, because because I believe that institutions, like, I think that a lot of times it's sort of like, I don't see a ton of difference between the rip it all down thing on the right and the rip it all down thing on the left. That, to me, they're similar in the sense that rarely, to me, does it seem like it's been thought of like what happens after that and I think there's a lot of, I guess what I would say is, I'm a fucking sort of one of the guys they call centrist. Like, it's like some sort of horrible thing, even though I'm not.
Well, I'm curious. Okay, because I'm curious because there are, and it's not. You're not alone. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are centrist. That's why they're called centrist. But I'm curious because to clarify, because there's like centrists who are like, this is what I think because I think is the best, and then there's centrists who are like realists who are like, if I were writing the rules, I'd make things more extreme, but I also know that I want to win, and so I actually don't think this is that bad to go down the middle of the road. So are you kind of more like anti-extremism, or you're a little more like you've seen all the facts and you're kind of like understanding how the system works?
I'm both.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up?
Or was it a Democratic area? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm black, so we're all like...
But like, in terms of like, I don't know, was it I mean, I grew up in the Bay and it was like very Democrat. It's almost like you had to actively work to be a Republican.
Well, but I guess what I mean is when I say, oh, I'm centrist, I say that in the sense that the people on the far left would say I was a centrist, even though I feel like I'm a fucking hard liberal, and I'm like, how the fuck?
Yeah. Well, like, last night on Comedy Quarantine, you said, and because you said this, I hope you don't mind me repeating that you actually like Joe Biden. So I think that kind of defines what you mean by centrist, right?
Well, I guess what I mean is I'm not a very particularly ideological person.
Okay.
I don't really think, I think that a lot of times ideology can yield bad outcomes because it's dictated by something other than the actual facts.
And the reality.
That's, huh?
And well, kind of speaking to the themes you were talking about earlier about understanding all the facts and the reality and being here for it instead of waiting. Like ideology puts this goal in the future as if you're already there instead of actually doing the steps to get there.
Well, yeah, I think it's group thinking.
Yeah.
Because I think it ends up being this thing where it paints this frame on almost every single thing. And it's not, I just don't think the world works like that. And I think that, you know, I think it ends up forcing black and white views on almost everything. And I don't think that's the world. I think that people are complicated, issues are gray, like everything is complicated. I think there's lots of things where you push here on the system and it breaks something over here, and ideology tells you push here.
Yeah.
And don't even think about all the rest of this shit.
I'm this is interesting because I think a lot of times people describe me as like meek and moderate, but and I used to think I was very much like, I have a lot of Libra energy, even though I'm a Scorpio. Like, I don't know if you like astrology, but very much balance. They're all about the scale. But recently, like in the last few years, because of being in LA and constantly having to look at how people look at me, I realized like just by walking in a room, like I am a radical, like I'm already not centrist by like who I am. Like I'm like a queer Asian comedian in LA, and I'm like a twin, and like it's just like I'm already like, damn, even if I'm the most central view, by default someone's already categorizing me differently. And that's when I started like just being like, what do I really think? So I actually don't think I'm really anything, but I always vote left. But I think that a lot of my views don't always line up with people because I will tweak them to what I feel. Like cancel culture, I'm not a big fan of just canceling everybody, which I think is a big left thing. But I also I'm curious because I think, so you're a lawyer, right? And you have a very academic background. And I also approach a lot of like these issues through a like intellectual lens. I'm curious, like, where did you always kind of feel like this growing up, or did you kind of develop this through school and debating? Like, what do you kind of, or I don't know if you know, but like, it seems you're very sure of your point of view. So I'm curious where this developed.
I think there are a lot of factors in that. I think that first, I'm not from California, and I feel like, you know, I've only been here 5 years. So I'm from Colorado, and I feel like a lot of times I'll talk to people out here and I'll be like, have you been
outside of the world? Yeah,
because I'll sort of be like, I feel like it is sort of this bubble, and it is sort of this thing where I'll be like, that just is not what it's like out there, and that's just not accurate. Like I feel like in part it's informed because like Colorado's an interesting place, and it was really interesting to me. A great example was how many, I feel like, people that I knew who, this is going to get very, very boringly political, but I feel like it sort of illuminates my point. I feel like there are a lot of people who I would see on Twitter who would be like, you know, Hickenlooper was running against Romanoff, right? And when Hickenlooper was running for president, everybody was like, fuck that guy, right? They were like, that guy is like this, he's basically a Republican, like all this shit. And then he beat the absolute shit out of Andrew Romanoff in the Democratic primary. And anybody from there could have told you that, because I feel like what happens a lot of times here is people will look at states and they'll go, that state's blue. Mm-hmm. It's just, but it's not really that. It's not like, it would be purple if the Republicans weren't crazy.
Okay, I kind of understand, because I feel like I went to school in New York, which both elite, like California and New York, similar. But I've traveled a bit, and I've through comedy and all this, and I I will admit, growing up in the Bay, I was very much of that, like, sort of Bay Area liberal, which is like, you're liberal on certain things, but you're also very naive and honestly a little bit ignorant about a lot of things. Like, there's a holier than thou feeling, and I've really worked against that, although I'm sure it's still embedded in me. But I understand what you're saying, because that's the kind of people I grew up with. They think that by just saying they donate to human rights and they care about human rights, that's enough. But then they'll, be mad at homeless people outside of their luxury building in San Francisco, and you're like, they're also citizens they're fellow citizens and other like they're your neighbor. Literally,
yeah.
The unhoused people in your city are your neighbors, and you're not going to invite them to your like barbecue. So like, you're obviously not thinking about them as a neighbor. But not only that, but you're complaining about that. So there's like this weird disconnect. I see a lot. Yeah.
There's a huge like NIMBYism among the like effete liberal left. But my thing is, like, this is why I'm a Democrat, because I believe that in the richest country on the face of the planet, not just now, but in all of human history, it makes no sense to ever have anybody who doesn't have food, shelter, or health care. Now, to me, how we get there, we can figure that out. Mm-hmm. It is not necessarily just ripping everything. Like, to me, I'm like, there are a lot of ways.
You don't want to write America the way the Game of Thrones writers ended that show?
Well, no, and I think that part of what bothers me about that is it's like this thing where I go, and maybe it's because the neighborhood I grew up in was not good. And it was, you couldn't have anything. Yeah. Just break-ins all the time. Like, and I wonder sometimes, I feel like I'll see some of when shit gets extreme, I'm like, I don't really think you thought this through. Mm-hmm. And I just think that sometimes a lot of it, guided by ideology, it hasn't been, like, for me, I think that's why a lot of Bernie's pitch never worked on me, ever.
Wait, can you clarify? This is where you get more knowledgeable than me. What is
for example, so I agree everybody should have food, shelter, healthcare, right? I think we should spend our money that we have differently.
Wait, did you say Bernie's pitch? Did I hear that right?
I was saying Bernie's.
Oh, Bernie.
Like,
okay.
Pitch.
Oh, I do know Bernie. Sorry, I was like, Bernie's pitch. Is that a thing I should know?
No,
okay.
Bernie's
I was thinking pitch, like this is a law school term that I'm like,
no.
Like Occam's razor. I'm like, okay, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. So I think because for me, I go, okay, I agree that everyone should have access to education, for example, and to college. So how do we accomplish that? To me, is like, there's like a lot of ways we maybe accomplish that. Yeah. It's not necessarily to just have the government pay for it, because to me, this seems like the initial issue is that college costs a fake price. It's not a real price.
Yeah,
it doesn't actually cost $180,000 for them to educate you. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, to me, solve the problem to have the government pay the $180,000, because it shouldn't cost $180,000. Yeah. So to me, the first issue is how do you make it cost what it should cost?
Like, there's a bigger problem. Well, that the Lori Loughlin news actually, I feel like, illustrates it well, because she just got sentenced to 2 months in prison, but she had spent at least $500,000 to bribe USC, and then $1 million bail, which she posted because she's rich. And already with all that money, you've got enough money, first of all, like more than I've ever had. So why am I trying to go to college? To get a job and make money to at least support myself, and maybe one day start a family. Who knows if I'll ever have enough to even support myself. You know what I mean? So it's like, we want to go to college to even get to where she is. So she's starting from the end, and it's not enough, and she can't get in. So there's a couple problems, not just that it's, unethical, but if we're going to look at her as a human, which a lot of people on the left don't like to see the opposition as human, but I'm like, okay, I'm not excusing her, but she is a human. So she felt that it was so hard for her to get her kids in college. So maybe there's another problem. Why is college, like, shouldn't every college be good? Shouldn't, as it gets harder, every college get better? And shouldn't we start to like get more Harvards instead of just one Harvard? But we don't think that way, and then the resources get scarcer, and then there's this gaping disconnect. Like, how do you spend that much money and fail? And how am I still paying back my loans? And like, I would go to jail for 2 months to like pay back my loan. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. Is like, the thing is, it's a fucking hustle. Like higher education.
But it doesn't have to be, is kind of the key, because for her, it's a totally different playing field.
But I mean, like, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Where you get, so what they do is they go, so basically we made a policy decision that I agree with, where we go, we think that everyone should have the opportunity to go to college, and if they want to, if they have the aptitude and ability, everyone should have the right to do that, and money should not be an obstacle to that. And then our solution to that was to go, cool, so we'll just give you loans, and you do whatever you want to do. So we'll give you the loans, and then the school pockets that money, and they pocket that money, never giving you, without any sort of guarantee that they're going to give you an education that will actually enable you to pay that loan back. So then they pocket the money and they skate. And the government sells that loan to a private lender. And that private lender then hounds you. So the government goes,
we don't have it,
And now you're just sitting around with a degree in fucking Middle Eastern history.
No, it's worse, screenwriting.
Right, yeah, that one might pay off your fucking loans.
I don't know.
But it's like, it's one of those things where, like, to me, the initial issue was that college, the market was distorted with the free money, because what it did was it incentivized the schools to just start, how do we get students to pay this money? And it wasn't about educating people anymore. And it wasn't about giving you a degree that would help you get ahead. It was about making the money.
But there's a paradox there, because in order to understand this, you need education. And the people with the education feel that they earned it and they need to make it. So then they continue making the system harder. Like you just described, I mean, not to get too into economics, but it's very fascinating now because it's such, it's an election year and there's a lot of misinformation around it, like the idea of debt, and like the Fed can print trillions and it won't really affect.
The government borrows.
It's fake money. Money's
zero.
Fake. It's truly fake. And donors will donate, especially on the extreme right, where there's a lot of money and there's a very specialty groups that are like very anti-community. Like there's like, the Koch brothers who literally will like pollute the world and, burn up Earth in order to save their asses. They are willing to put so much money into policies that will make them not have to pay more money later, but they actually end up spending so much to begin with. Like there is this, like, not that we would all sell ourselves, but I'm like, if all these Republicans actually just like drop your dick on the table, like drop your cash that you're going to put towards policy and then distribute it amongst us, maybe we'll have enough to just like, fucking do your policies. Maybe like, just give it to me. Like maybe we'll be like, okay, like, I don't know.
I guess my thing is like, we
have
so much goddamn money.
We have it.
It doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, what doesn't work for me is, we'll just keep it. Well, it'll still cost 180 grand.
Sense. Yeah.
It shouldn't cost that.
Yeah.
The reason it costs that is they take that fucking 180 grand and then they go and they build a big stadium. Yeah. And then they don't pay the
football players. Yeah.
And then you work as a barista paying off $180,000 of loans. And on the weekends, you put on a fucking hat of the people who are playing the sport. Like it's such a hustle. And my thing is that it doesn't make any sense to just have the government pay that money. It shouldn't cost that in the first place. And so what I come from is, and this is why I would say, like, I like the Democratic Party because I believe in those things, and also because the Republicans are insanely fucking racist.
If the Republican Party didn't exist, because like a lot of times we're in opposition to, that's the one. To me, what I don't like about Tea Party, even though I understand, I've studied other governments, I understand why we do it. But if, let's say right now, for the sake of just getting to know you more, the Republican Party as we know it now doesn't exist. So the Democrats exist as they are. What do you like about them and what don't you like? Because not in opposition to, but like, let's say you're just deciding yes or no on this thing by itself?
Well, I guess I would say that that's a hard question to answer. And the reason that I would never be a fucking Republican because I don't believe in just cutting taxes reflexively. I don't believe in any of that shit.
But in this world, you're not comparing it. You're just like,
right.
Hey, Troy, I got you a proposition for a party, and it's the Democratic Party. And it's like, you haven't seen other options yet. There could be another option. Do you like what you're seeing? Like, what are your notes?
Well, so these would be, again, I guess it's kind of hard because it is about a choice, right? Like, it is about a choice of which one you choose to be part of, right? And it's hard to go like, well, would you be part of it if you didn't have to choose? And you go like, I don't know that I would be part of anything if I didn't have to choose it.
Well, I guess I'm trying to, so I'm trying to get at what you were talking about earlier, this idea of like states aren't just blue. Like, I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying. I don't think I'm necessarily like full on Democrat like you, but I agree with the fact that we shouldn't think of things so binary. Like, we're kind of cornering ourselves, and the Republicans know this because we're not playing the same game. Their values are not to save everyone, so they're willing to play with our lives. Our values are just so, like, when they push us into corners to like make a statement that's in opposition to them, we're being forced into a choice. Whereas I kind of think there is a little more room for like overlap if the Democrats were like, here's actually what we want to create, which we think is the perfect party. The Republicans will still exist, but we have this thing. And maybe, like, for example, I'm very much a pacifist, but I do think the Democrats could get more of Republicans if we're open to a guns rights discussion. And I'm not talking about guns rights like let's totally allow mass shootings, but I'm talking about we've been forced by the gun lobby to be so anti-gun that now you're seeing shit where you're like, people aren't talking.
Yeah.
And I think the Democrats lose on discourse because of these binary ways of thinking.
Right. And I guess that's kind of what this is what I think. I guess in part it depends on what you think government should do. And I think, and I guess this is a broader point, I think that as far as the Democratic Party, what do I like about them? So things like Social Security, things like Medicare, things like, I believe in a robust social safety net. That's what makes me a Democrat. But I also like capitalism. So I
want to high five you because I like capitalism too, but when it works, I don't like the shitty parts. But many of my guests who like social programs are like so extreme Marxist that I'm like, and I'm not necessarily there. Yeah,
I can't get with any of that, and the reason is that, like, for example, I really liked Elizabeth Warren because what Warren's trying to do is make capitalism better.
Yeah, because
it does have a harshness to it, and it does have a there's an outgrowth of that creative destruction, right? So, which is people can be hurt by that. People can lose their jobs. They can fall through the crack. And to me, what we want to do is put a floor under that. And also, when Warren's talking about breaking up banks, she's talking about breaking up monopolies. That's about making capitalism work better because competition is that. So to me, but I don't want to centralize everything. I don't think that that's better.
I see.
So I think that
you're not trying to make radical change, but you're trying to make. What's interesting is I think this is my theory. I don't know if it's totally the way you would talk about politics. I'm not a scholar, but I think a lot of the political parties, like people in them, not like the leaders who are corrupt, people. They think they're arguing over values, but they're not really, because at the basis, everyone is kind of arguing for their own needs, right? Like food, safety, housing, but in a different way, right? And I think the difference is actually not values, but who you consider people. So the Democrats, I think, have a wider range of who we consider people. So we're like, all people need, food, housing, shelter. And the Republicans are like, all people need food, housing, shelter. But they're like, but people are my family, me. I'm people. You're not people. And I think that's why we clash when we argue, because I've done it too, but I'm like, oh, you're bigoted or you're racist. They're like, well, I'm a good person. I care about my family. And you're like, well, that is actually true. You do care about your family. But you don't think I'm your family, even though we're both Americans. And I think they hear the insults and they're rightfully, to me, that I'm rightfully insulting them. But this is where we get lost in like, you know what? I actually don't like them, but they are people. I can't really I'm not able to bridge that either because I have anger. And I think this is where we get lost in I think we all want the same things. I just think we aren't aware that there's enough resources for everyone.
Well, I also think, though, that I guess this is part of the thing to me, is that I actually think it's good if the Republican Party were a healthy conservative party. I think that would be good. But I don't
But more fiscally, right? Because I think they've gone so far into radicalism. I don't know if they're conservative anymore. They're trying to change. They're trying to change things.
It's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's not conservative if you're trying to change. Radicalize is literally the opposite of conservative.
Yeah, it's not. I just like solutions. I just want to see
solutions.
How do we fix shit. So if we go,
interesting.
I think it's insane that I can look outside in Los Angeles and see Lamborghinis and shit going by, and also people without housing. That seems fucking crazy to me. But what makes me different is I'm not just. It's not a thing where I look at it and I go, that guy bought a Lamborghini. Fuck that motherfucker. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Like that's not.
You want to fix the system in a realistic way, and because we're in comedy. We constantly have Marxist friends who are saying fuck capitalism, be commies, but then they also go home, and that's nice. And I'm not saying they should give up their house, and they probably would if you said prove it, they would. But I'm like, that's not the point. But the point is we all have these boundaries and what makes us feel safe. I don't think the solution to creating more resources is to vilify others for wanting to feel safe. Perhaps it is, we can get to this point where maybe you don't need the Lamborghini to feel safe, but if you just take it from them, that's not going to feel great. So yeah, maybe we don't need that right now, but maybe we can work to this place where there's more parity instead of just overnight burn it down,
Well, I get that. I think I'm coming from a different place.
Okay. Well, I want to add one thing about my past, just so, because I don't know how much you know about I don't know how much you've talked to Marxists and stuff, but I think a lot of comedians are very leftist, and this is where I get caught up because my family's from Taiwan, and we lost our country in the Chinese Civil War to communists. I don't really think anybody's done communism the way it's Marx wrote about, to be fair, but I also know a lot of people have tried, so I'm what makes us think we're gonna do it? And when I hear especially a lot of white male comedians talk about how we should burn down the system and everything is anarchy and Marxism, and then I'm I agree with you on so many of the other things. They're out there protesting for Black Lives Matter. I'm yes, that's awesome. They're donating to programs. That's great. And then they're communism, and I'm no. And they're no, capitalism sucks. I'm my family lost our country. And then they go quiet and they're well, So I'm you're not really seeing the picture there, because I like American freedom. I just think it could be better.
Well, yeah, that's where I come from. But I think that a lot of it is. This is my view. I think that a lot of them fucking pose them.
Poser.
And the reason that I
ollie.
say that
can you even do an ollie? You're such a poser.
Well, the reason I say that is, to me, someone saying I believe in anarchy is fucking crazy. And they've never, to me saying that, I'm okay, then you've never been in a place where the neighborhood is really crime ridden, and you can't have anything, and you have to worry, because anarchy is, I'll go fucking knock you out in the middle of the street and no one's going to do anything about it unless it's chaos.
Yeah.
The whole idea is ordered liberty, right? There's no liberty without order.
That's a social contract, but there is a spectrum, I think. I think,
but I guess what I mean is the same thing with like you're saying with Taiwan and communism, and so part of the thing about it is inherently totalitarian.
Yes.
It has to be, because the whole idea of, well, we're basically going to force everybody to be part of the same thing, right? And the thing is, if you go, well, I don't want to be part of that thing, it blows the whole fucking thing up.
Yes.
And that's number one. And number two, it is premised on people not ever being flawed in a way.
Yeah.
That people won't be selfish and self-dealing and things like that, because what always brings those systems down is people get at the top, they become, they're corrupted by the power of that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the people who are supposed to be taken care of are waiting in lines for basic necessities and things like that the state gives them. And that to me is not desirable. I don't like it, just isn't. And I think that part of it comes, I think that a lot of people that I've talked to, I think they think it means free college, free healthcare. I think, don't get me wrong, I think there are some real people who've sat and read the text and they agree with it. And I think there are other people who are like, I think it means free college, free healthcare, and then otherwise, it's still me waiting in line for an iPhone.
Well, that's the reality. Is there's not. It's not because we're not there yet. It's harder to imagine. So I think the realist way to actually achieve it is to actually do the steps it would take to get there. Which I think I don't remember if I think we talked about Obama before we started recording, but like Obama gets called a centrist because he understood politics and how to actually, like, I've heard him on a podcast use the metaphor of like steering a ship. Like you have to steer it slowly where you're like turning at degrees, and then eventually it goes closer to where you want to go, but it's not as fast as a speedboat.
Right.
And I understand that. It doesn't mean I have to like it, right? Like I could actively say, hey, I will love a world where there are no people who don't have food and shelter. But to snap my fingers and burn down the rich people's house and distribute the money, that also feels wrong. I in my heart see everyone as people, even bad people, and I'm like, well, that's what you're doing is creating a cycle of abuse. Like if I did that, which people in history have done, there's like the Indian Revolution, there's like, like the French Revolution. If I were to literally burn down a rich person's house, even if I hated them and they had kids or whatever and they survived, and if they didn't survive, that's implying we're killing them, which is really bad. I'm creating trauma, which in generations from now, when I'm doing well and I've created this utopia, that generation of kids is going to be fucking angry and they're going to use their trauma. It's just going to start the cycle over. Like it doesn't work to just like, I just don't think it works when you completely dehumanize any group, no matter how hateful, because then you have to live with this fact that you turn on your own people. I don't know. It's
right.
really,
but I also feel like I guess that's kind of one of the things is like, and it does feel wild because I'm like, man, I remember I felt like I was like really, really to the left, and now I feel like I'm very much not. Like, and I didn't change.
I think you are though. I think that you're just a lawyer, so you consider all sides, and you're taught to, and a lot of people don't. But doesn't mean that. So I think like what you calling them posers is funny but true, because by behavior, you can see that a lot of these people are not as radical as they're saying, right? The people who line up for the iPhones but are out there like throwing fire. But
it's also inconsistent.
Yes.
I guess what I'm saying, because to me it's interesting to be like, I hate the two-party system. We should have one communist party. It's fucking crazy.
That is insane, and hopefully nobody actually thinks that. But I will say, okay, you describing it the way that power corrupts. I think there's another way to phrase it, because I think it's true that power corrupts, but I think it's more just like nobody is incorruptible, because it's not always power. And just I've seen open micers with no credits to their name be abusers. So it's like nobody is incorruptible, and if we, including ourselves, and if we first understand that, I think we'll at least be starting from a place of reality. And then on top of that, it's this idea that it's more important to design a good system that can be fixed for errors. And I love to talk about robots, and you mentioned iPhone, so I'm going to work in this metaphor. But like let's say you design a really great iPhone and it's like really great and you code and it's like got all these like features and it's a great system. I can guarantee we design a good system, but I can't guarantee that every single iPhone will work. You might get one that's faulty, but guess what? As a big company like Apple, I create a warranty, I create a program, I create a Genius plan. So you can feel safe about buying my great system, and then if you get the faulty one, just turn it in and get another. I think we need to think of government like this. Like, I think if we fix the system and not just put all of our cards on one, like, Jesus figure, I think it will help us more, because we lose everything when that person gets corrupt, because we lose our God essentially, and they're not the system. Like, the system is there to make us feel safe, and the people are there to drive the ship, but without a ship you can't go anywhere. Anyways, I changed metaphors halfway through, but
right. But I agree with that, but I actually think that's pretty much the system we have. The one you just described.
Yes, we have everything we need right now legally to go back to a place of humanity. But I think it will take people seeing the truth, and a lot of people, and I also, because this is a therapy podcast, and I do really believe this. I think a lot of times it's just people not understanding their own trauma. And we've gotten to this place in society where, like, collectively, now we're all going to be trauma bonded from just quarantine, on top of other traumas we all individually have. And then there's like leaders with power and trauma. And so much of these like patterns are just out of not dealing with their own issues. And I'm not talking about like you have to have one bad thing that happened. Like, it's compounded, right? Like the way you see the world, like the way you feel judged, the way you feel like you worked hard so you deserve everything you have, or that people are out to get you. Like at every level, there's people who have these beliefs, and it turns into like patterns of abuse if it's not reasoned with. So I don't know.
Well, I also think that, like, and I guess I should clarify, when I say that I think we have the system that you're talking about, I mean, I think we have all the tools to make it better.
To fix it.
And I think that that's the thing that makes me like very much like an Obama style Democrat, because I actually do really believe in pretty much all of the shit.
Yeah.
Like all of the like American shit, I pretty much believe in it, and it's not. And I guess I get that it's hokey, but I think it's kind of, I don't know. I just don't really think cynicism is that cool, and I feel like right now it's like very trendy to be really cynical, but I don't actually think that shit is that cool. Like I think it's kind of easy, and I think that for me it is a situation where I think there's no reason ever for a country this wealthy to have people without food, shelter, and health care.
Yeah, I agree.
All I care about is if we, as far as rich people go, I don't really give a, like, I care that they're paying the appropriate amount of taxes. If we're paying enough to provide for our people, where we have, then I don't give a fuck how much money Bezos has.
Well, that's the reality. Is these complaints come out of needs not being met, and I don't think people always want to understand. People don't really want to reckon with that. Like criticizing billionaires, which I do too, but I truly am. Yeah. I don't care if people have money. I actually think having money makes me wet, But like, I don't want a lot of money unless everyone has it. Doesn't mean I don't like money. I just am taking all the facts. Like, yeah, make me a billionaire, but then please do it after everyone has it, Like,
I just think we should. So I think the essential problem is we really sort of broke. This is my view, and I can't act like I'm the most informed person. Like the law stuff is really more about. It makes me more suspicious of breaking institutions, because I feel like you can see why things were set up the way they were. There's generally a reason. It's not usually just set up some way for no reason. And I feel like sometimes people are kind of like reflexively like, it was set up for, it's like, it wasn't necessarily that everything was set up.
Well, you have to consider other sides when in law, right? I mean, I've never been to law school.
That's the entire thing.
I imagine it's all about understanding, even if you think you're taking one side, it's all about like, what are all the angles people could take? So it's about information. And I don't think people like sometimes people say they want information. I mean, have you ever had someone like ask for notes and then you're like, okay, and then you do, and they're like, I thought you're my friend. You're like, you didn't want. Then you should have been like, I want a compliment. You didn't want notes. You wanted a compliment.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, do you want information or do you want to feel good? Like, I cannot promise you the information is good, but I can promise you it is true.
Right. I guess I don't want to make it sound like I don't have critiques of capitalism. I think the issue is we've let government get too close to business. Like, I almost think of business as almost like a fifth estate sort of thing. And to me, it should be a situation where government is not super tight with them, so that the rules aren't set up in such a way where we're not taxing people and we're not providing for people. Because I think it's crazy that we spend a shitload of money on a bunch of fighter planes and shit. We don't even use that shit. We have nuclear weapons.
It's literally designed to make people rich. But what? Okay, I have a question that's more pertaining to your personal life that it does affect this, I think. Are you an only child, or do you have siblings?
I have two older brothers.
Okay, so you're the youngest?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm just curious because I sometimes like to not parallel or transpose government or views about politics onto family, because it's kind of like a bigger family. And the one like key thing for me I've recently realized is like whenever people try to do a one solution, like Communist Party or whatever, I'm like, you can't even get everyone in a family to all want the same thing. Like literally you can have a small family of 4 and like, or 3 and be like, I want you to grow up and be a football player and go to Harvard. And your kid can be like, I want to be an artist, Dad. And that's it. Like they're a person and that's it. You board them, they're a person, and that's, you can maybe like make them have a hard time, but they're going to have what they want and that's it. So when I think of governments just totally being like, here's the rules, do what I say, like it just won't work, because it doesn't even work on the smallest, easiest of levels where you share blood and you love each other. Like, I don't know. So I was just curious because I think the way you grow up in, like, if you shared resources and had siblings, sometimes affects the way you see like the distribution of wealth as well.
Well, yeah, and I guess when I think of the distribution of wealth, it is again, I think it's for me, it's pragmatism versus ideology, because like I've talked with one of my friends who was like, ideologically, billionaires should not exist. And I was just
but
like,
they do exist.
I was like, the reason it's a problem is that you have a line of tents out there.
Uh-huh.
If we didn't have that, I wouldn't give a fuck about somebody having $1 billion.
If everyone had enough to eat and live and be happy, none of us would care if someone had $1 billion.
Yeah, well, I think ideologically, some people are just in the like space of it just should not be the case that anyone has that much
Look,
money.
we all could go out and get a cat, right? Cats are abundant. You could find a cat for free on Craigslist. You could find a cat in the alley. You can steal a cat, whatever. And then there's people with like 100 cats. There's like cat people. Nobody is out here. I mean, besides the fact that they're not humane, but nobody's like, it's not fair. Kendra has 4 cats and I just have 1 cat, because we don't want cats. Okay. If you don't want a cat, you don't have a cat. If you want a cat, you have a cat. I think I mean, I know this is a silly analogy, but it's sort of similar is what I'm getting is like, it's this idea of scarcity and value. If I don't necessarily think people would care about, I know you're saying that people would still be against it, but I feel like if it was like cats, I think people would be like, sure, you could have 100 cats. Fine. I don't like you, but.
Well, no, I agree. I guess I'm just saying like, I was talking with my friend about it, and I was like, and he's not even that super left or whatever, but I was like, well, the issue is that we need to make sure that everyone has enough. And past that, I mean, like, I care more about equality of opportunity is to me the thing. And I think it ultimately just comes down to how you view what government is supposed to do and how you view the relationship of people to the state and to each other. And to me, the reason that I don't think that socialism and communism ultimately in a grand scheme are better is because they are sort of one size fits all. And they're, they go, okay, we can do co-ops for this and that kind of stuff. But I just think they're just inherently less flexible.
Well,
And
yeah, and they're not. Well, you're kind of describing a specific type of leftist. It's a very like cynical. What you said, it's anti. They're not necessarily proposing like. I don't love billionaires or the idea of it, to be honest.
I don't love billionaires.
No, but I mean, like, whenever I criticize them, I try to take the, like, opposite spin instead of criticizing. Like, I also kind of have a solution-oriented brain. And a lot of them are more comedic, but sometimes I'll say it and I'm like, yeah, we could. This would work better than what we're doing now. Like, I like the idea of flipping, like, instead of punishment, reward, but actual reward, real value for good behavior and less punishment for bad behavior, assuming people are just going to have bad behavior, but real, actual worthy rewards for good behavior would actually increase good behavior instead of putting this value into avoiding getting caught, which is where we are. Like if it was something like simple, like all, I used to work in retail and all stores have like a budget of like loss prevention because you're just going to get stuff stolen. That's part of it. It's built in the budget. Because of that, and there's a cycle, and because people who really steal a lot, or like there's people who steal for thrills, they know this. They know there's a certain window you can get away with. If you don't get caught, it's in the budget. This is like a preventative / like punishment way of doing things. But if you had a store that had, let's say you literally were like, I have an expensive watch store, and I invite you, I challenge you to come and steal a watch, let's say you get good security with robots or whatever that you really can't steal it, or you can't steal it and get away. It's hard. But I go, if you can walk out of the store and we don't catch you, it's yours. No punishment. But if you can't, no punishment. We stop you. We get it back. That's it. No punishment. No fear. Come and try us. I don't think a lot of people would do it. Some people would, but ultimately they're like, oh, damn, I guess it's really hard to steal from the store. But you would have to follow the rules. But also, budget-wise, kind of similar budgeting to loss prevention. But it's a little different. You're kind of... And now if you really want to reward people, maybe you could have some sort of other program where, like, come to our store every, like, I don't know, 10,000 person gets a free... something. So you're kind of creating this positive atmosphere and experience for going to the store and trust. And then you trust the people who come buy from you. They trust you. And you create an experience and a family. And I just think that not all families do this to begin with, so I don't really think we do this as a government, but that's how I want the government to be, is like reward-based, and then everyone just starts from a good place. And if you fuck up, you do, because people fuck up. And then it's like, all right, well, you're not going to move up for fucking up, but try again.
Yeah, I think that, like, that's what I mean. I think there needs to be sort of a floor that no citizen can fall under, because otherwise what the fuck is the point? It's like this pandemic, right? And they sit and they go, Republicans pull the insides of their pockets out and they go, oh shit, we can't give everybody $600. And then what they do is they turn and they spend a whole bunch of millions on F-35s, and Trump goes and he pulls out a New START. And then they go, what are you going to do if it starts an arms race? And then they go, well, we'll just spin Russia and China into the dirt. And you go, well, fuck, if you could do that, you ought to be able to give my friends $600 fucking dollars.
Yeah, it's wild.
So to me, it's priorities. I think that it's getting back to, and so I don't know. I guess like maybe there are some people who are like, well, the only way you're going to be able to fix those priorities is to break the whole thing. I don't agree with that. I think that we can put a floor under which no one can fall.
I like
by actually breaking up, like increasing competition by breaking up monopolies, increasing taxation, increasing, how you tax on shit like offshores and shit but also spending our fucking money differently. Like we like the amount of money we spend on like just shit we don't need, and I mean like the government. Obviously, people like running around are consuming and doing whatever they want, and I guess that's what I mean is I don't mean the individual, I mean the government.
Yeah, I see.
I don't really care.
But I think it all trickles up. I'm a trickle up economist. Well, okay. I mean, this is for sure. There's so much more I want to say, but I think we're nearing the end, so I'm gonna start wrapping it up. But maybe we can talk more about this another time. But I have a game to end, and originally I wrote a game for you, but also there's another game that I've been doing that actually might be more closer to what we're talking about. So you can pick. So the first one that was based on your feelings wheel. It's called Feelings Wheel of Fortune. And the second one is where it's kind of like you get to create your own government, but you have 3 rules. Okay, so this is not scary. Yeah, this is not scary. It's fun. So basically, on a Comedy Quarantine, you shared a feelings wheel with us, which I just love so much. Your therapist gave you a wheel that tells you how to define your feelings. So I loved it so much, and basically, okay, here's what it is. So life is a wheel of fortune, and we are a wheel of feelings, and this statement is a wheel of cheese. This is a very simple game of feelings taboo. Basically, I'll give you a scenario, like a specific scenario, and then it's like taboo. I'll give you a few like feeling words you can't use, and then tell me how the scenario would make you feel without using those words. It's kind of feelings wheel inspired because you gotta be specific, right?
Okay.
Ish. Okay.
Okay.
You have a chemistry test for a pilot at 10 a.m. Woohoo! You mapped it the night before, and it will take 30 minutes to get there. You miss your alarm and wake up at 9:30 a.m. and realize it's in Culver City, not Studio City, and will take you an hour and a half to get there. How do you feel? Taboo words: mad, sad, angry.
Terrified.
That's a good one. Damn. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting anxiety thinking about it. Okay, next one. You found a wallet on the floor and there's $500 in cash inside and a phone number. You call the phone number and the woman who picks up says she fucking hates the person whose wallet it belongs to, that he is a bad guy that has done bad things. How do you feel? Taboo. Confused, excited, scared.
I would say that I feel confused because...
That's taboo.
Oh, wait, confused is... Okay.
These are the words you can't use. You can't use confused, excited, or scared.
Confused, excited, or scared. I would say I would feel annoyed because that wasn't the fucking question I asked you, lady. The question I asked you was whose is this and how do I give them their fucking money back?
Cool. That's good. Okay, final one. Your favorite musician is in town for a concert. You're debating buying a ticket, but you're not sure if you should spend the money on it. It's quite expensive. Your best friend knows you love this musician and texts you that their aunt knows the lighting designer and asks if they wanted to take a friend for free, and they thought of you immediately. How do you feel? Taboo. Just one word, happy. You can't use happy. How do you feel?
Excited.
Okay, cool. Nice. That's it. That's the game. I don't know. I wanted to talk about the feelings wheel. All right. That was great.
Cool. Okay.
What was that? Oh yeah. What do you want?
The feelings wheel is weird. It's a weird thing. I think she's largely abandoned it. She hasn't really brought it up anymore in my therapy sessions because it seemed too difficult for me.
It looked hard. It was a lot of feelings I couldn't even. I mean, did I describe it correctly? Or how would you describe it?
It's like, it's just like a big, you can Google it and there's like all kinds of pictures of them. It's just like a big wheel and it radiates out. And there are different tiers of more complex feelings under each thing. And so like, in the middle is like the average dude who's like happy, mad, sad, whatever, like the most like sophomoric levels. And then it gets more and more specific and gives you options.
Yeah.
So like under sad, it'll be like depressed, anxious, like whatever. Yeah. And then like under those will have even more specific ones. And I guess the idea is to get you out of saying, I feel happy, and being able to more articulate exactly how it is you feel in the interest of being able to communicate your feelings better. I was not good at the feeling.
It's hard. I mean, even I love to talk, and I used to just say like, I feel bad. That's what I literally would say. And I started to like get better at it, and recently got better at in relationships, which is where it's hardest for me to bring up feelings before I even know what they are. Because I used to be like, I gotta hold on to feeling and figure it out before I decide like, is this a relationship I want to be in or not. And then that's when you get in a situation where you're like already checked out. But now I'll be like, I want to, but I'm anxious. And I'll be like, I don't know why, but here's all the things I could describe. And then if someone trusts you and is a loving partner, they'll be like, okay, yeah. Oh, and then they'll add it to it. And then you're like, oh, maybe I was just anxious because of something that has nothing to do with it. You know, like it's hard to do because until you start, you have no idea what you're feeling.
Oh, yeah, because I'm like the king of fine.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm fine. Yet I'm
fine.
upset, but not at you. I just don't want to talk to you. But I like you, and you're like, something's going on here. Why am I ignoring this text even though I love you? Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm fine. Like literally in my therapy session today, before like she goes, how was your week? Don't say fine, because I just am always like, I don't know. I think I'm always like inclined to not really be like that expressive of my feelings, but also because I think part of it is like just like a dumb dude of like, oh, I have no feelings, shove it all down. But then there's also kind of a little bit of this like, you know, who gives a shit? So it becomes fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll say that. I say fine. Anytime anybody asks me something, like I almost always fine.
That's funny.
Well, it's just like my default. I don't even think about the question.
Literally, I feel like anytime I say it's fine, I'm like, it's never fine. Okay, well, that brings us to our final game because we've talked so much about politics. I want to know, in your society, what are the 3 rules everyone would have to follow? No magic.
So, okay, I have to lawyer this a little.
Yeah,
if
sure.
That's okay. So when you say rules, what do you mean? And what I mean by that is, do you mean laws or do you mean like government principles kind of?
No rules. So, if, for example, I could say you have to be 5'8" to live here.
Oh, okay.
Like, I mean, that's a stupid one, but like, it's not magic, but yeah, you would exclude a lot of people. But so then, yes, and the consequences are real.
Is that what this is?
No, I mean, the consequences are real, right?
Everyone dies under 5'8".
Well, like, you don't die necessarily, but the consequences would be real. So, like, I mean, that's a stupid one, but actually someone once gave that to me, that everyone's the same height. But I said, without magic, that would mean you would have to have a really strict immigration policy, and you would have to put a lot of money into, and probably people who are born, you would have to like put them somewhere else until they grew to that. Like, so it's no magic, but you can create weird rules that would never exist in real life. So that's why I say it's not a law, but it's 3 rules.
No, it just gave me the idea of like a society run by women on Bumble where every dude under 5'8" is put in a camp.
Oh no.
Sorry.
To get out, you have to get into a serious relationship.
They're just like, no. They're just
and they don't want to get out at all.
It's a work camp.
They're like, fuck this.
You're under, but we don't want to see you on the street.
Yeah. Who are you talking to on Bumble? Damn.
I'm doing pretty good.
Sound mean.
5'10". Everything's good. So I don't really care. Let's see. So I would say, here's the thing. Here's what's weird.
I know you're lawyering this for sure.
I'm not, but it's one of these things that I try to be cognizant of because anytime I talk about government, it stops being funny.
Okay, utopia then. This is not. Imagine that everyone outside is not dead. They can choose. Okay, this is an experimental island, or it doesn't have to be an island, but it's experimental. You can go, but you have to follow the rules. So nobody's gonna die if they're not in this. You know.
All right. So this would be my first rule: no speed limits.
Okay.
No speed limits. I love no speed limits.
First rule. Okay.
No speed limits, but. That's only on the highways, which would be like an Autobahn system where you can go like 180 from like Denver to LA.
Damn.
On like a straight shot. But you can't, not just like fucking around out here.
Okay.
Like not like that. Not on like regular streets, but highways, no speed limits. Let's see. What else?
Do you have to be a good driver to enter, or anyone can get on those?
I mean, you gotta have a license.
So like
You
if
know,
I
'cause
was
you
my
gotta drive a car.
first day with a license, I could drive my car there.
Yeah, you drive your car, and if you get on the highway, you know, like Germany has the Autobahn, Montana used to not have speed limits, like, and you can just, you know, max it out.
Okay.
You know, once you're on the highway, and, you know, obviously you can still be sued and stuff if you crash, cause damage, whatever, but like, you know, I don't know that we necessarily need to be babied on the highways the way we are.
Sure. Okay.
And let's see. So that I would say that. I would say we have. Let's see. What else? What else would be a really cool one? This is kind of a hard question.
You wanted 3. I said you could just do 1.
I know
you wanted 3.
I know. I would say more weekends than weekdays.
Oh.
So the weekend is Thursday to Tuesday. So you only have to work on Wednesday.
Okay. You only have to work on Wednesday. Wow, bold.
Right? You only have to work on Wednesday unless you want to.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm going to change this rule. I'm going to change the rule.
Okay.
So instead of every week, almost the whole week is the weekends.
Just the weekends.
Because that wouldn't be any good.
What about the people who work at the places you want to go on the weekends?
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm changing the rule. I'm not going to say that anymore.
Okay.
Instead, I'm going to say everybody gets at least 2 months, like summer vacation style.
Ooh, that's good.
Everybody gets like 2 months of vacation. You can't necessarily take it all at once. But everybody has 8 weeks of vacation every year that they can separate how they want, and you know, so they can do that stuff. And also, I think it would be good if everyone gets to fly for free.
Ooh, that's cool. Who would pay
Free
for
flights.
it? The government?
Who would pay for it?
Yeah.
We'll worry about it later.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like well, you know, I would have to see a little bit more to decide if I would want to live here, because I'm just, you know, I'm definitely like more of a safety person. In my blood, I'm scared, but I could see it working. This no speed limits, flying for free. I like that.
Well, yeah, you know, we'll build it out. We'll build it out.
Yeah.
You know, there'll be like a nice little a lane over here. You don't
very
have
transportation
to go
heavy constitution here we have.
Yeah, or maybe we even go. I mean, I like driving fast. I guess it is kind of transportation.
No, I like it. So that's it.
True.
I dig it. I'm sure a lot of people would love to live on this world. So can you tell the listeners where to follow you, find you, if they want to check out your comedy, anything like that?
You can find me at Troy Walker ESQ on Instagram and Twitter.
Cool. And go ahead.
And also on the Cancel Podcast with Caleb Zine.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, there's stand-up. I'm on stand-up shows on occasion. And yeah.
Sweet. Follow Troy. He's very funny. You can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod, and follow me on follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Larissa T. Thanks for coming on the show, Troy.
Thanks for having me.